Gordon Kressler with Chesapeake Valley Seed. So we're not hearing out of this microphone.
We can hear it.
This isn't good?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay. John, you hear this back there? Okay. So I want to introduce Gordon Kressler with Chesapeake Valley Seed. He's the one that made the lunch that y'all are eating possible. So continue to finish up your lunch. We're going to give him a few minutes and then get back on with the program.
So my name's Gordon Kretzer, and thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity to learn some more and network with all you guys. We started Chesapeake Valley Seed in 2013. As a lot of seed companies and distributors in this area, we're moving more and more into that lawn seed and turf seed oriented side of the business, and we saw a really big need and demand for reclamation, natives, forbs, that we're seeing throughout the state, throughout the region, State Highway Administration, energy projects and jobs that were going from your typical tall fescue, ryegrass type mixes to your natives and wildflowers. So that's what we have. We have a facility just, we're trying to turn it up a little bit, John. Excuse me. So we have a warehouse just north of here, about 15 miles away, where we warehouse all single species raw seed. We have our own blending facility, bagging facility. We do everything from cover crops, forage, natives, obviously, wildflowers. We have the ability to custom blend, mix anything and everything you guys can think of. Some of the mixes that Dan mentioned earlier, the species mentioned, are common species for us. 10, 15 years ago, I would have thought that was crazy. Like, oh, these are wild species. We would never carry those. That's the normal side of our business now. Thousands of different species. I welcome anybody here in this room today that wants to take a look, come around in our facility, see our blending operation. We're super proud of it. We're a warehouse full of these species that no one else is carrying in a really large distance from here. And we can, like I said, bag, blend, and turn out mixes really quick. We have a really easy way of doing that. If you don't feel like calling me, there's a website, ChesapeakeValleySeed.com. There's a tab there where you can download or attach specifications of seed mixes that you get for your certain projects. That goes right to my email address. It doesn't go off to some corporation or whatever. It goes right to my email address, and I can email you back pricing, availability, and how you want it bagged. And that's really about it. I'll be around all day. Please come by. There's tons of notepads that also has my information and cards. So feel free to pick those up and let me know how I can help. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for that.
And let me emphasize as well that Chesapeake Valley Seed helped to cover a lot of the cost for lunch. So double cost. As well as the Chesapeake Bay Quail Forever chapter also covered a bit of lunch as well. So thank you to Chesapeake. Is this working? Oh, it's really close. Okay. All right, so we're moving into the panel discussion where we can have a lot of Q&A. So if all of our morning speakers can come up, and we got, I think, 8 seats here. I think they'll cover everybody. Matt, I know you're still eating, so we'll give you a minute. Coming up, Daniel Lawson, Dan Small, there we go. Got Hay questions, if you have fire questions. Chris Roberts is still here. Bob, come on up, yeah. I hope to do this at the end of the talks. Eric Ludwig, you still around?
Get John Long. Get John Long.
John Long. Oh, our 2 private landowners as well. So we got all our speakers. We got the public land management side covered as well. Bill DeLonzo, come up. We do want to have both components, not just the public land people, but also private landowners who are doing actions to restore habitat. So you heard from John Long a little bit earlier. He owns property just by the Nanticoke WMA. Bill DeLonzo, you've not heard from yet. Bill owns several farms in Maryland and Delaware and has successfully worked with Tall Timbers, which is a restoration nonprofit, to reestablish quail populations on his farm. And he's been a great collaborator. He helped to facilitate a prescribed fire workshop earlier this year with Tall Timbers. So I also wanted to make sure we had him up. So welcome, Bill, as well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we got a big, full question. Thank you, Amy Johnson. We're going to hear from Amy later. Go ahead.
I have a question for Dan Lawson. Thank you for mentioning invasive species because it's such a big job as far as land management. Oh, sure. Okay, thank you. So my question was, you put up that great chart about what herbicides to use for which invasive species. A group of species we see a lot of in Virginia are the Japanese stiltgrass and arthraxon seem to be really big issues, and I'm wondering if you could recommend a management strategy for those, both using herbicides but also non-herbicides for both. We have a lot of owners that are trying to back away from herbicides.
Yeah, so certainly, and let me get here. So hold it really close now. So I mean, it really with any kind of disturbance or break in the canopy, you're going to see, especially microstegia expand. There's actually, I don't know if it's out on the market yet, but there supposedly is a selective herbicide for microstegia. So that's big. That could potentially be big. Otherwise, you're looking at top killing with glyphosate, just your standard, standard way to manage it. The problem being, again, disturbance, it's going to wake it up again. So it's going to be an ongoing thing.
Do you know when that's supposed to come out?
Let me dig in on that a little
Okay.
bit, because I've heard it from 3 people now. That was
Okay.
within the past couple months. So
That's great to hear.
yeah, absolutely.
And the common name for microstegium?
Japanese steelgrass.
Thank you.
One other.
Yeah, we have a lot of that in our area.
Yeah.
Other questions?
All right. I got a question for, I don't know who. But I've got about 100 acres of wildlife management, CRP and CREP, primarily in summer grasses. And my summer grasses are pretty well between me burning in the spring and the size of the thickness of the summer grasses has pretty well knocked out all my forbs. Got any ideas on how I can get some back in?
I can answer from some experience, but I'll preface it by saying that all sites are different, right? But we have some of the same tall grasses that you're talking about, big blue stem switchgrass, Indian grass, coastal panicum, and through our burning, has increased in dominance. But we did after some burns, we did some strip spraying, so every 3rd nozzle on a boom, just with glyphosate after the burn, after it got up about 12 to 18 inches, and all of those strips filled in with wildflowers the next year. And you can see some of those results going on for like 5 years. Like aerial imagery still shows the design on how we sprayed it. We did single sprayed and then checkerboard sprayed, and that is still evident after we've burned. So it can be as simple as that. Daniel talked about disking. That's obviously going to stimulate the seed bank, but if you have invasives, that can be a problem. So strip spraying kind of alleviates some of the issue with invasives.
Great. I know somebody else had a question. I actually heard somebody at lunch from Irving Nature Center, Kyle, was asking about how to manage grasses that have taken over. So great tips from Dan. Anybody want to add anything? Bob or don't feel good? Any other questions? Who else?
I've got a question about Forbes too, and I might already know the answer. You may have given us the answer in a single slide. There was a gentleman earlier in the day showed us a slide of what he said much of Maryland would have looked like before colonization. And so here's my, and it was a beautiful picture. It was sparse trees with an amazing thick carpet of grasses and forbs underneath. And a question I've had for a very long time is, we know from the work of Mr. Talmy in Delaware that oaks provide, the 550 different species of butterfly and moth caterpillars will feed upon oaks, 450 for cherries, et cetera. He's got this amazing data set. But I've wondered, great, there's plenty of habitat with trees for caterpillars, but where's all the nectar gonna be? And when I saw that slide of a sparse tree canopy with all of the flowering forbs underneath, representing kind of pre-colonial landscape, I felt like, wow, that's the answer, because that's how it was. And I just want to comment on that, if that's generally right or not.
That was my slide. I think that things were quite a bit different then, and we don't know. Although we do have, our botanist has some really cool photos from. I don't know the time frame, but it was when. Like some of the earliest photos we have of the Eastern Shore, and it looked very similar to that slide. Now it was all grainy black and white, but the diversity was really remarkable, and the trees were large. I mean, these were really large trees, probably, mainly oaks. And but yeah, there's just maybe a tree per acre, so you would have had this just phenomenal diversity of herbaceous vegetation that would have supported pollinators and a lot of other things. Yeah, I think the landscape would have looked a lot different, for sure.
Bob, can you talk about what, after the Idlewild burns, what your botanist found?
Yeah, so Matt had some aerial photos of our Idlewild Wildlife Management Area up there, and it really was the first time we tried this thinning and burning approach. Now, they had been doing it for decades down south, and some of the plantations, Tall Timbers was a leader in that, but we never had translated it up to this part of the country and attempted that type of management, as far as I know, until around that time frame, and that was mid-2000s. But we thinned that stand of loblolly pines, and it was just 100% loblolly pine plantation, right? And we thinned it down to 20 to 30 basal area. We had a couple different treatments there, but I think it was 2 years following that, our natural heritage side of our unit went out there to look for rare plants, and they found just an amazing number of them. And what sticks into my mind, of course, I'm not a botanist, I don't know every one, but they had 18 species of native legumes just in that one stand that, before had just been 100% loblolly pine. So that seed is there. It just needs to be released, and we need to find the right management actions to do that, and then maintain it through time. While we deal with some of these other issues like invasives and things like that. So yeah.
I see Rick Avon has a question.
Yeah. That was my question, what I was going to ask earlier. I guess it's fair to say that stand being thinned down to 20 or 25 square feet, that tract is no longer being managed for the timber. It's strictly for the wildlife habitat.
Yeah,
That loblolly pine is not going to do well. It's not going to self-prune itself.
It needs thinned again.
Yeah. So yes and no. Will it have the economic impact and value of what it would have had we stayed in the forest products route? No. But at some point, I believe that our intention is to continue the successional training. And so at some point, we will be getting out of the loblollies on these wildlife management areas, and we will be seeing a transition from pine to mixed hardwood. And, there's more, we don't know, ideally, with the fire, we'll have those shrub and scrub oaks eventually that are surviving this burn rotation over time. They're gonna create their own savanna type thing. So it's like, if I hit the fast forward button for 100 years on that, like, yeah, we'll probably, as long as we don't get too crazy with the burn and intensity, yeah, like first butt log and a half, like, there's still value out there. And at some point we'll remove that when it's successionally approved. So yes, like, we're talking 15–20% of the value had we kept it in loblolly pine plantation management, but there's still economic value out there. There's still enough trees per acre out there, and we have enough trees around it to where if we're having a timber sale, an operator will pick that up. Something a private landowner will not have the luxury of, for sure. But yeah, I would not say that the economics, they're just not the top priority.
Well, I'm looking at where I am.
Well, you have saltwater issues. It's like you have a whole nother set of problems.
Well, yeah, that too, and with no market, I'm all for wildlife management. Maybe it's a better way to go. I need a new forest management plan.
And I think there's a balance as well. If I would just add that you can't, we're very focused on wildlife habitat on these areas, and those are the projects we're going to highlight. But you can thin less and still have some wildlife benefits, but still maintain that timber harvest potential in the future. I also want to clear up, John Long is not my father. Somebody maybe I should have said that earlier.
All right, so we've got a question from Janet on the Zoom. She asks, given that we have a finite amount of land, we have to manage it for humans and many other species as well as quail. Could you please elaborate on how grasslands, forklands, the type of early succession habitat we've been talking about can coexist with efforts to increase carbon sequestration, solar and wind farms, and raising livestock for human consumption?
That's the leadership for that one.
I wasn't paying attention to the question, sorry.
Somebody's venture and answer the question. Yeah.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Yeah, I guess I can touch on grazing and haying, because that's the system that I work in. And I guess what we do at Virginia Working Landscapes, right, we're partnering with these private landowners and using a working lands model, right? So focusing on research that can actually inform conservation and getting that research to private landowners. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm touching on the answering the question, but yeah, I guess taking that working lands model, I think, is going to be what we need to do as far as our grazing lands and our haying lands to support both biodiversity, grassland birds, and also they to benefit people, right? Because these two things can coexist, and I think we're seeing that right here in Virginia. So I don't know if I can talk about the other things, but
I'll quickly just mention about the climate change part. And if you look at the Eastern Shore, for example, most of that grain that's grown is for chicken or in other cases around the country for meat production, right? So if we can convert some of that grain and kind of revert the way our systems work and put it back into perennial cover, grassland cover, you're going to increase the wildlife value of those properties, but also the perennial ground is going to absorb and intake carbon much more than these annual crops, right? So you have a win there. So if we can lower our meat consumption to add more to grasslands and get out of this intensive row crop farming to grow food for cattle and chickens, you're going to get a big win for climate change there. And then in turn, some of these species we've been talking about are also going to benefit from that. So that's kind of a direct impact on some of adding more grasslands and removing some of these crop fields for sure. The solar is interesting because I have one example from where we are in Queen Anne's County Church, outside of Church Hill. That there's probably a 200-acre solar farm there now. And that property owner was known for edge-to-edge farming, no BMPs on that ground. He obviously started to go deal with the solar, converted about 200 acres of it into solar. I'm guessing 200 acres, it's huge. So the understory of those solar panels now is perennial cover, which is gonna be way better than annual crops, right? Queen Anne's County has an awesome set of rules that landowners have to follow, which is basically a 100-foot screen buffer and made up of like X number of native species. It's got to be trees to shrubs to grasses, etc. So that person who was like not very good at conservation farming just suddenly converted that land into really good habitat for wildlife, and also it's going to do good for carbon. And then there's lots of people looking at ways on introducing grazing animals into solar systems, and then of course you can do a lot for pollinators as well. So there are definitely ways to add habitat on the ground that is also going to improve quality of life for humans as well, not just for wildlife.
And I think a lot of that comes with, partnering with your neighbors that we were talking about earlier. It's not a one-size-fits-all on every piece of land, but, that's where we're gonna need to work cooperatively with one another, both state and private, to kind of meet the whole picture.
Yeah, and then on the forest side, we've been doing forest inventory for over 100 years. So we just know we're out of balance. Our forests across the state are too old and they're not being managed. So we need markets and we need landowners that want change and want to see things change. So we're not advocating for every forest in Maryland to be turned into quail habitat. We're just advocating for balance, and we recognize we need balance, and we want to help others that are looking for that same balance.
I'll take off from what Matt was just saying, and this is an amazing group of people and stakeholders. I'm really impressed, and thanks everybody for pulling it together. I guess I would just, I work on the forest wildlife side of things, especially early successional habitat for woodcock and grouse and a lot of other songbirds. So my question sort of for the group as much as the panel is, how do we do this for forest species that need early successional habitat in the next year or two? That's also a dire need, not just in Maryland, but in a lot of other mid-Atlantic states. And it just flows directly from the kind of work that you all have done such great things on around quail. We need the exact same kind of thing in the more kind of upland forested parts of Maryland in a year or two, and I'd be happy to work with folks to help put that one together. So thanks very much, everybody.
And just so everybody knows, that was Ben Larson with the Ruffed Grouse Society. And I think, anybody have anything to add to the forest management?
I'll just add that those are great comments, Ben. And when we were initially talking about doing something this year with the symposium or something, last year there was the Quail Summit. There's been a little different focus each time, but one of the approaches I suggested, like a regional, workshops in each region or some type of thing. So hopefully that comes here in the next year or two. Maybe Luke can pull that together. Pull that off, but
idea for next year.
Yeah, Western Maryland focused workshop would be wonderful. So hopefully we can make that happen because those species need some help as well.
And I will say that for like us, though we focus basically mainly on quail here today, we're still focusing on other species as well. So we only spoke about what we've done on our quail areas, but our forest management is still part of our scope of work for every year activity. So it's not like we're only focusing solely on quail species.
All right, maybe one last question before we wrap up the panel. Yes. Calvert County.
Thank you for putting this on. It's been a great experience for us. We are in the process of planning on changing what we do with part of our farm. And we've met with soil conservation, we've met with the forestry service. And listening to what's going on today, I feel like we'd be better off if we could have one comprehensive meeting on the farm with the brain trust that could help us figure out how to meet our goals, what to plant, when to plant, how to maintain, what cost share programs are available. Rather than kind of piecemeal meeting with this group and that group. Is that something that can happen, where we meet with maybe Quail Unlimited, maybe Luke, maybe Soil Conservation Force, all at one time and try to put together a comprehensive plan?
So yeah, absolutely. I would say your contact for that is going to be Julie Devers. So she's my supervisor. So I'm pretty much based on the Eastern Shore, for NRC projects over there. But no, absolutely, that's would be great to have everybody out there at the same time. That way nobody's overlapping, and you're using whatever programs you're using to the full extent. So if you need our contact info, just come see me, and I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would also add that, workshops like this, try to pull all this information. We're gonna record all this, put it up online so people can hopefully, read and review some stuff beforehand, get at least a basic, and then know who to call, and make sure you call the right people. But we are actually in the midst of developing a wildlife management website, and I'm gonna have a page on all the different resources people can gather in on. So, great, thank you so much for the panel. Thank you all for speaking, all the work you guys came to develop your talks. It's been great so far. Please give them all a round of applause.